Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is October the 26th, 2018. Strong hand, long-term thinking, buy and hold, unconfiscatable. 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Personal responsibility is new counterculture. I just said a lot of my slogans like, wow, I didn't even mean to say them all. But I'm excited because we've got a worldwide guest. We've got Lauren Gameroff in South Africa. Then we got Tai Zen, who's an American, but he's in Vietnam right now. But he's from Vietnam originally. But he's just returned back to Vietnam after many years. And now Francis Pouliot is in Montreal because that's his place, man. He's out in Quebec, Canada. So I am really pumped. I wanted to, and I'm in Santiago, Chile, where there was an earthquake last night. But whatever, this kind of things happen. Pound that freaking like button. So I usually don't read CoinDesk articles, and I don't talk about them. And there was an article, though, and the first line in it just inspired me and made me, I got to read this first line because all of my guests will have something to say about this because they all have different takes on this. So crypto needs a killer app and a better sales pitch. The average consumer just doesn't care about decentralization. All right, so I thought about that, and the average consumer doesn't care about decentralization. The average consumer doesn't know very much about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. How much should we care about what the average consumer wants right this second? Should we be trying to come up with gimmicks like crypto kitties to get people in here? What is needed now versus what can be done later? Should we be working on an uncensorable base layer of cryptocurrency, or should we be reaching out, trying to get people to spend right now? So, Francis, I open it up to you. What do you think about this? Ooh, what is going on? Muted. Francis, is Francis frozen? Oh man, he's frozen. Francis, what happened? All right, then we'll go to I know what Lauren. Lauren, what do you have to say about this?
So I agree totally with the second part of the title about decentralization. No one cares. The vast majority of people on this planet who are yet to come into crypto and make it a big thing don't even know what that means. They have no idea. But the first part of it, I don't agree with because it says crypto needs a killer app. Now, the killer app has always been currency. So Adam, as you know, I love coming onto your show and talking about Bitcoin Cash. And I always love it when people respond. So I'm glad that I can be here doing that. And the killer app has always been currency. And as long as we can make it currency and we can make it cheap and easy to use and people can send it to their relatives across border and they can pay for things easily if they don't have access to traditional payment systems, then that's the killer app. All these other things, CryptoKitties and smart contracts and digital assets will come once we have created the killer app, which is cryptocurrency, and we've made that stable and we've made that scalable and everybody uses it. So I agree entirely that the vast majority of people don't care about decentralization. In fact, most people have heard about Bitcoin, but they don't know there's a difference between one or the other. They just want to get into the scene. And if you sell them one and it's easy to use and it's nice, enjoyable, then they'll use it. So I don't agree that there's no killer app. It's always been currency. But I do agree that, of course, they don't care about decentralization.
So you're saying that you think that they currently care about just transactions, basically, spending cryptocurrency is what their consumers that they want to consume right now, and that's what cryptocurrency should be focused on right now.
Yes, they want a nice app that looks pretty, that connects to their friends, that allows them to easily load their wallet with a Bitcoin, and it easily allows them to buy things with it. That's what people want. We think that, you know, as cryptocurrency buffs, we're in this little bubble, and all that matters is creating this decentralized store of value that governments can't control. That's kind of been the driving force behind crypto, but it is only suitable for this bubble that the crypto heads are in. It's not suitable for the vast majority of people on this planet who we want to get into crypto, so crypto can eventually moon and change the world. So the idea now is, how do we get other people that are not cryptocurrency buffs into this space? And the only way we're going to do it is by creating cool products.
Okay, and so that is the average consumer of the day. You want to get them in here now. Francis, how about you? Should we be trying to get the average consumer into cryptocurrency right now to spend right now? Or should we be focusing on the base layer, the uncensorable base layer, the stuff they don't understand, like decentralization?
Yeah, sorry about that. Like, I popped out of the video. My internet's really bad over here. I'm in a undisclosed location, streaming on my hotspot 4G with no internet here. But yeah, it's a great question. So, you know, I started out in Bitcoin as a advocate for adoption. So when I started out at the Bitcoin Embassy, we had this physical office in 2013 with a help desk, a kiosk, which was downtown Montreal in a very public space with a big glass window. I was like, you know, 12,000 square foot building. So a lot of people would come in all the time. I mean, we interact with definitely over tens of thousands of people. And I have to say, my view of adoption changed over time as I interacted with real end users, and I actually saw who's using Bitcoin. Like you know, when you're running a physical Bitcoin kiosk, you see all sorts of crazy stuff. You meet all sorts of users, and you kind of start to lose this conception of the target user that perhaps some of the Silicon Valley startups have. So, you know, unlike what's just been said, I really don't think that users are looking for neat apps to pay their friends. That's not Bitcoin's value proposition. As far as I understand it, after all these years, you know, people will not use Bitcoin because of the technology, and people will not use Bitcoin because it's cool or because it's necessarily easy to use. People will use Bitcoin because they need to eat, and people will use Bitcoin because their wealth has been seized or is about to be seized or is about to be censored. At that time, when that happens and they're ready to make that decision, it is definitely a good thing that we have like user-friendly apps and abstracting away all the complexity. But I see that as more being kind of like a second step. The first step. So, you know, your question was, what's the fundamental use case of Bitcoin? And, you know, you mentioned that some people are trying to go after a killer app. Well, you know, blockchains are very, very specific things that do a very specific, you know, they're very complex and simple things at the same time, but they do one specific thing that nothing else can do, specifically Bitcoin. It's prevent censorship resistance. And via Bitcoin's deployment as a peer-to-peer network with, you know, a Schelling point, we achieve something called immutability of records, which is a really good use case. And we also achieve something called, you know, censorship resistance with Bitcoin, and obviously some money. So the use case of blockchain is very, very specifically to have immutable publications ledger. In our case, it's for financial transactions, to have censorship resistant transactions themselves, and to be able to enforce a sound money policy. So it's you can't just go around trying to find other use cases to make it fit. I mean, there are other use cases. Like once you have immutable Bitcoin transactions, there are some use cases that you can use. You can do with Bitcoin. For example, you can use it to make records immutable by putting a hash of a document in a Bitcoin transaction, because any data that you put in a Bitcoin transaction will automatically inherit the properties of that Bitcoin transactions, meaning it's immutable and trustlessly verifiable. And you can also use the Bitcoin scripting language, or so to speak, Bitcoin smart contracts, in order to build, you know, sophisticated second layer platforms that are leveraging Bitcoin's proof of work. And in that case, I'm talking about sidechains. Sidechains are basically a kind of governance mechanism for consortium that want to have some kind of decentralized arbitration mechanism, right? So if you have a bunch of industries that are collaborating together, they want to have a consortium, and they don't want to have a third-party arbiter, judge, or escrow to handle the disputes within a consortium. You can use, you know, a Bitcoin sidechain in order to do that. And of course, for the payments use case, you have stuff like Lightning Network, which is there. So, you know, to kind of wrap up, people have this idea that, you know, Venmo is really good. You know, fiat coins like USDC. These are cool things. But these are like novelties for millennials. The way that I see them, these are like fun things to use. You know, we used to have a bunch of stores in Montreal where merchants would accept Bitcoin payments. And, you know, I would be the one that would go to the merchant. So he would accept Bitcoin in his wallet directly. And I would come like every month to like 6 or 7 merchants, and I would just give them the cash, right? So we would like monitor like what purchase it was, and these guys would just get Bitcoin. They would go straight into our Bitcoin wallet, and then I would go back to the shop and pay with cash. And then, you know, we were the only ones spending money at those merchants. And it's not because Bitcoin sucked. At that time, the fees were really low. People had Bitcoins. It was easy to pay with Bitcoin. The user experience was like super seamless. It's because people don't want to spend their Bitcoins. People see Bitcoin as this censorship-resistant hedge or asset. And in terms of payments, you really got to see like who are the power users that are using Bitcoin payments. These are the users of censored websites, of censored software, of censored services that are trying to circumvent something. And they're willing to go through very, very large and difficult hoops in order to use Bitcoin. You know, people don't realize how many costs are involved with Bitcoin payments. Like the Bitcoin transaction fee is such a minuscule cost of using Bitcoin for payments. Like when you're using Bitcoin, just the volatility of the price is going to either wipe out your value like of 2% per day or something like that, or increase it 2% per day. So the payment transaction costs are not an obstacle to Bitcoin adoption. The biggest obstacle to Bitcoin adoption is specifically this opportunity cost and the knowledge of everyone that Bitcoin price will go up in the future. So I have actually thought about how to solve this problem. I have thought about this with other companies like Bitrefill, which accepts Bitcoin payments for phone top-ups. And we've come to the conclusion that the thing that's missing for Bitcoin adoption is not better apps and it's not cheaper payments. It's just people need to earn Bitcoin as a living. People need to get their income in Bitcoin. They need to get paid in Bitcoin. So a statistical observation, for example, that we have at Bills. So Bills is Canada's largest payment processor. So, you know, when people spend Bitcoin, a lot of them will spend it on Bills. And we also have a website where we let people buy Bitcoin buy Bitcoin online, like a kind of Coinbase equivalent. And what we've seen is that the people that buy Bitcoin with fiat don't spend Bitcoin. People that buy Bitcoin with fiat, they tend to hold Bitcoin or they'll sell later for more fiat. So they're going to be like buying at, you know, in September and selling in April at a, you know, 30%, you know, premium or from what they bought. But the people that get Bitcoin as income, they do tend to spend Bitcoin on goods, services, to pay their debts, like, etc. So the simple solution is, if you want more Bitcoin adoption, just get more people to earn their income in Bitcoin.
All right. I know Laurent's going to have something to say about what was just said, but I want to get Tai Zen's opinion in here first. What's your take on what's been said so far, Tai Zen?
The question is, what's going to get the Bitcoin to get adoption? Basically, that's the general.
And at the same time, should we be worried about Bitcoin adoption now, or should we be building a base layer? You know, the uncensorable aspect of, you know, because a lot of people, it's very complicated right now, and the average consumer does not understand the importance of it being unconfiscatable. Like here, Vention Migtal just sent in the super chat. Thanks for the $5, dude. He says, exactly. After seeing so many of my fellow mechanics wrecked by the family court system, I wanted a government-resistant store of wealth. Well, Vention is smart. He wants a government-resistant store of wealth, but most consumers, they don't even know what that is. They don't even know. So should we be worried about getting most consumers in right now, or should we be worried about you know, a government-resistant store of wealth?
Well, there's three points I want to cover to address that that you just said. You know, first is that you got to look at the cultures. You know, I've been living in America for like 4 decades, and now I finally left America and relocated back to my home country of Vietnam. And what I've noticed here, Adam, is that in the West, our credit card system works fine. You know, it's so much easier to use than Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency. It's so, anybody can say that it's easy. Crypto is easier. It's not easier than a credit card. Okay. You don't have the fraud protection and all the other stuff. Yeah, it comes with an expense and there's huge transaction fees with credit cards, but it's still easier. Okay. And so in the West, people don't see the need for crypto, or like, it's not like well, why should I jump to crypto? It's not easier than credit cards. And then I shift over here and I relocate back to Vietnam. I'm currently broadcasting from Ho Chi Minh City. And what I'm noticing here is that in these countries like this, that's not as fully developed as Western countries, people are still using cash. Like the idea of using a bank account, right? They don't trust the banks at all. They don't trust the banks at all over here. Like, you know, everyone that I have talked to so far, and keep in mind, there's like over, I don't know, 9 million plus people over here in Ho Chi Minh City. And I haven't talked to everyone, but the people that I have talked to, no one is a huge fan of using banks because they have this fear that the banks are going to run off with their money. They don't know what's happening. They just want cash in hand. They want something that's tangible. And when I talk to them about crypto or even mention to it, they're like, what's you know, they call it electronic money here when you translate to Vietnamese. And they're like, what's electronic money for? Like, we just want cash. Like, why would you trust someone to send it, like, you know, through the bank? Because they think it's some type of banking system. And no matter how much I explain to them, they just don't get it. Like, hey, we just want cash. Like, people buy houses here, like $500,000, $1 million houses with, you know, blocks of gold, you know, bricks of gold. And that's what they buy it with. Like, you know, they go buy a house with bricks of gold and they pay cash for it. They don't believe in finance and they don't believe in none of that stuff, you know? And so the idea of something abstract, such as a digital currency or an electronic currency, is foreign to them. You know what I'm saying? Later on, I'll get to the part about the misconception about the ban in Vietnam. I made a separate video about it, but I want to summarize it for your audience here also. So that's the first thing, is the Eastern culture wants physical, tangible money. The Western culture does not see crypto as being easier to use than a credit card, which leads me up to my second point, is that right now, crypto is not, you know, it's just not user-friendly. It's just not user-friendly. And people don't realize that people do not, you know, like, I think Henry Ford said the hardest thing for a human to do is to think, you know, and people don't want to have to think and figure shit out, you know, excuse me, you know, but they don't want to have to think and try to figure out, how do I use this Bitcoin? How do I download it? What's the difference between these wallets, using hardware wallets and all this stuff? That is confusion. And I come from a sales background. And I say this all the time when I'm training salespeople. Nothing kills, you know, adoption. Nothing kills a sale faster than confusion. Like, when you try to sit there and explain to people about, you know, cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin or anything like that, you got to whip out the wallet, you got to download this and do all. It's just nothing but confusion. And when they download it, it's not like the wallets are user friendly. Like, the only one I've seen out there that's really user friendly is the Exodus wallet, you know, and still the most user friendly one, you know. And full disclosure, our company has an equity interest in it. So, but it's just, things are not as user friendly because we have all these technical people, and they will just want to see who's more technical, and they brag about their technicality in software development. But the reality is, if you want adoption, you got to make it so it's easy for people to use. You know, you talk to all these crypto software engineers, and every one of them are like, it's simple, just do this or just download this and stuff. And they don't realize that the majority of the world cannot do that. You know, and they got to think of, how do I make this easy for people to just look at it and just use it without a lot of instruction, you know? And so those are the things that I would point out. And the third thing is that, you know, and this is the third point I want to make, is that this infighting in the Bitcoin community, you know, like when you and I first started, we only had one Bitcoin. So all the channels, everybody was on broadcasting the same message. And now we got all these people taking sides and everything. And the sad thing is that, you know, the sides are all, you know, in my opinion, trying to accomplish the same thing. But because we're not on a unified front, you know, in promoting the message, you know, like we used to when everyone first got into Bitcoin, right? There's confusion. Like, people come in, you know, and there's one coin talking bad about another coin, and this coin talking bad about another coin, you know. And you know, when people see that, they're like, why should I use this currency? I'm just going to go use my government issued money, you know? So those are the three things I would say that, And so if we can eliminate those things and focus on getting people to use it, I don't believe that the some people like to focus on the protocol layer or get that straightened out before we get adoption and stuff. And I don't believe so. There was a time when the adoption was growing and growing, and people were actually using it as a currency, as an electronic cash, like it was intended, And nowadays there's just too much confusion on why someone would need to use Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. And that confusion needs to be removed so it can gain faster adoption.
Well, here we go. I wanted to say one thing. Tizen doesn't even realize it, but he just gave a perfect segue for Lorian to talk about Centbee, which he's about to do. So everybody pound that like button if you like that coincidence right there. Ty didn't mean to do that, but it's a lead into Lorian, and I'm sure Lorian has some things to say about what Francis said also. So tie in Centbee, I guess now, Lorian. You got your perfect
sure.
tie.
So Francis, Ty, you guys made great points. Everything you said is exactly the state of crypto today. And to touch on one of them, and Adam, you said it, the adoption thing. That is critical, because there are some fundamental things about this crypto space that are built into the fabric of this ecosystem that mean that we can't just sit on this space and slowly tinker with it and slowly evolve it and slowly develop it. The adoption is going to be critical to the success of any blockchain. And the reason for that, if we just look at the Bitcoin type blockchains, where we have this idea of a supply that gets halved over time. Now, Adam, you frequently talk about the 2020 halving. It was exciting when we had the halving before. Clearly there was a supply and demand dynamic. The demand was high. So when we saw the halving happen, we saw Bitcoin, the value went up. And that is one of the messages, Adam, that you've been preaching a lot is, listen, just hold out for 2020, because if we can get to 2020, you're going to see that there's going to be a drop in the supply. There's going to be the same demand. Price is going to go up and everyone's going to get excited. But that actually is a huge problem, because let's talk about BTC right now specifically. If BTC cannot get adoption by the time 2020 comes, the supply is going to halve. And that means miners are going to be desperate to try and make up their income on something else. Now, of course, everybody is depending on Lightning Network, where people can eventually start transacting on Lightning Network, and that will make the space a lot more user-friendly, I guess, in terms of at least the speed of transactions and the fees. And that means that the miners are going to have higher fees, but that's okay, because all you're ever going to have to do is pay for the high fee to open the channel, and then you can have your instant transactions at very low cost. But that's all dependent on Lightning actually working out by 2020. Now, we all hope that this is something that could happen, but if Lightning doesn't turn out to be user-friendly, as you mentioned, enough so that a vast majority of people can start moving in, and the demand goes up to use Bitcoin as that settlement layer, the halving is going to be the worst thing that could happen to Bitcoin, because then if miners can't make up those fees, the reward with the fees, the chain is going to die. So getting back to the adoption, if we can't get a blockchain to be adopted, it will eventually die. Now, I don't know how long that will take, but to me, it's sooner rather than later because of the dynamic of the halving. So it is about user-friendliness. It is about trying to create products that appeal to the mass market, not to the people like all of us who've been in the space for so many years and love the idea of decentralization. Government can't censor your transactions. We love that. That's what has driven a lot of people in this space. Francis, you talked about it. But it doesn't drive the vast majority of people that we need to get into the space so this thing can take off. It hasn't taken off yet. And it is going to be all about creating user-friendly wallets. Ty, you mentioned that you have an interest in a user-friendly wallet. That is precisely what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a wallet that my grandmother can use. And if we don't get that right, she's not going to use it. And that means Bitcoin is not going to be used. Now, obviously, I'm a Bitcoin Cash fan because I feel like the whole Lightning prospect is a lot more gray. I can't see that turning out. I mean, obviously we're hopeful, but it's not as certain, and I much prefer the notion of on-chain transactions and so on, but that's a debate we can take. But at least it means that I can create a user-friendly wallet, and I don't have to now try and build a product that depends on a technology, aka Lightning, that doesn't exist yet. I can just go and create the user-friendliest wallet, by the way, Centbee, and I will put a little logo out there. If you want to right now, check out Centbee, and if you tweet your receiver address, I'll even send you some Bitcoin Cash, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can go and dump it if you like. But my focus is trying to get the mass market into the space, because I want this to work. I want Bitcoin to succeed in whatever iteration it is. And the only way we can do this is by getting, as quickly as possible, the mass market to get into the space.
All right, Francis, your turn. What do you got to say about all this? I'm sure you have some words.
Yeah, sure. Well, I basically disagree with everything that's just been said. So a few points, particularly let's just talk really quickly about Lightning Network. So, I mean, I know a lot about the Lightning Network because at Satoshi Portal, like we develop open source middleware for web apps and mobile apps to integrate Bitcoin nodes and Bitcoin node software like the Lightning Network. And I mean, the Lightning Network does work. It is live. It is functional. I think one of the main issues, the only issue we have with Lightning Network right now is that the entire, and you know, this reflects the twisted kind of mentality of people in Bitcoin regarding adoption, like looking for payments, adoption in payments as fast as they can in merchants without looking at why would people spend Bitcoin anyway at a merchant if they don't, you know, if the price keeps going up. You know, this is the problem of merchant adoption has never been fees. It's always been the price of Bitcoin always going up, and people don't want to sell it because they know that if you sell it now, it's like, how many times have you bought something in the past and you're like, wow, my Chromecast, I have like a Chromecast at home, which is probably worth like $10,000 like today because of the amount of Bitcoins that I paid for just a tiny gadget that was like 70 bucks back then. So Lightning Network does work. It's perfectly functional. It's actually quite amazing technology. The only problem with Lightning Network right now is that not a lot of people or no one is focusing on buying and earning Bitcoin using Lightning Network transactions. Everybody's focusing on spending at a merchant using a Lightning Network transaction. And this is, again, a result of everybody focusing on merchant adoption like it's important. It's not that important at all. What's important for Bitcoin holders is that they can always cash out their Bitcoins whenever they want. They're not stuck in a pyramid scheme. They're not stuck in a Ponzi scheme. The point of Bitcoin adoption at the merchants is that people know that if you have Bitcoin, you can actually exit it anytime you want. And it's actually far, far easier for people to use like prepaid credit cards, prepaid debit cards, and actually shop around and then periodically use their cold Bitcoin wallet, their Trezor wallet, and then just dump a little Bitcoin to pay off their credit card. It's much, much, much easier to do that. So for Lightning, all that's missing is for like Bitcoin ATMs and Bitcoin exchanges to perform withdrawals in Bitcoin and not only in Bitcoin Lightning Network transactions, and not only accept Lightning Network. And think of, you know, kind of in a way, it's the same difference between like cash in the bank account and cash in your hand. You know, it's not the same. It's not the same. They don't have the same properties, right? So when you have cash in your hand, it has different properties. When you have cash in the bank account, it has different properties. So there is this kind of little friction between Bitcoin and Lightning Network transactions, and people just need to earn their income in Bitcoin and in Lightning Network. That's the best way to get Bitcoin adoption and like Lightning Network adoption. Regarding just the use case of Bitcoin. The use case of Bitcoin is sound money. It's as simple as that, and it's censorship resistant, and it's as simple as that. I was studying, you know, I'm an arbitrage trader. That's what we do, right? That's my core business. So I send money from one exchange to another in Bitcoin and fiat, and I buy low somewhere and I buy higher somewhere. That's what I do. And people think like blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and all that, they make payments and settlements like much easier and faster between institutions than fiat or Bitcoin. And that's just not true. If you look at the fiat coins, for example, like the USDT and the USDC, people think, oh, wow, look at that. That's a great example of how blockchain technology can increase efficiency, can decrease friction costs. But that's really not the case, because if you're moving money from one institution to another using a fiat coin, it's exactly the same process. For example, let's say I'm on Kraken and I want to move money to GDAX or something like that. You say, oh, well, you know, using a fiat coin like USDT is great. Well, no, because these coins are just fiat bank IOUs, which are secured by an exchange. So it's the same thing of holding money on Kraken. For example, you have Bitcoins on Kraken, you sell them there. Now you have a USD balance on Kraken, right? It's stable. It's not volatile anymore. It's not Bitcoin anymore. It's denominated in USD. So if you hedge yourself, you don't need a fiat coin to do that. Just go on an exchange, sell your Bitcoins there, and hold the balance on the exchange. Because holding a fiat coin is exactly the same solvency risk, right? Because if the exchange that is the custodian of the fiat and the Bitcoins has a solvency problem, then he can't credit the IOUs. It's the same of a fiat coin. A fiat coin IOU is the same thing as an exchange deposit IOU. It's the exact same thing. So you go on an exchange, you sell all your cryptos there, and you hold a fiat USD balance there. What happens if you want to move money from one exchange to another? Well, using a fiat coin, it's not a censorship-resistant panel. You have to go to exchanges that are part of a consortium. It's not liquid. So just take that USD balance on an exchange, just buy Bitcoin with it, and take the Bitcoin, send it from your Kraken balance to your GDAX balance. So all of these use cases for these cryptocurrencies, when they come to moving value, they're exactly the same as PayPal. They're exactly the same as SWIFT. I mean, it's not more streamlined or easy to send a wire transfer from an exchange to another seriously than to send a fiat coin. So the main value proposition of Bitcoin comes from, why do you want adoption? So, everybody's talking about let's get adoption, but why? Why do we want Bitcoin adoption? Well, the way I see it, there's only two reasons why I would want Bitcoin adoption. The first one is I want to use Bitcoins with other people. I want to opt out from fiat as a principle. I don't want to touch fiat currency. And I see it the same way as using PGP. I don't want to use ClearNet. I don't want to use public messaging channels where everybody can see my transactions. If I use PGP and I want to communicate with others via PGP, I need them to adopt PGP, because I don't become private if I download a PGP software. I only become private if I download PGP software, you download the PGP software, and we actually use it. That's like adoption. For Bitcoin, it's kind of the same thing. I want people to adopt Bitcoin because I want people to accept Bitcoin from me. But the real other reason why we want adoption is because the features of a blockchain do not come from code. That is a mistake. The main feature and the main value of blockchains comes from scarcity, not utility. Utility does not drive value. Grass is useful for a lot of stuff, but grass grows everywhere and it's not hard to produce. The value comes from the scarcity of a blockchain, and the utility of it comes from decentralization. So what are the properties of Bitcoin that are useful? Again, censorship resistance, immutability, and scarcity. This isn't stuff that's coded into the Bitcoin code. It's the fact that people are running a decentralized network of full nodes, and they're downloading the full node Bitcoin Core software. And every time there's a transaction, they're fully validating that the monetary policy rules were respected and that the transaction rules were respected. This is what makes Bitcoin decentralized. The reason why Bitcoin is censorship resistant is simply because there is a large network of nodes. If you take Bitcoin and you fork it into Bcash, or something like that, and change the parameters, it doesn't have the same features as Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash is not censorship resistant. We know that. There's a single group of miners developing it, and there's not a lot of nodes running it. Bitcoin Cash is not immutable. They change the rules all the time. They even change the issuance schedule of Bitcoin, and people don't know that. Bitcoin Cash is issuing more Bitcoins than Bitcoin because of the emergency difficulty adjustment that they did. And Bitcoin Cash doesn't allow for trustless verification because nobody's going to be able to download Bitcoin Cash nodes, because Bitcoin Cash nodes are going to be 100 gigs eventually per block. I mean, it's already hard to download and use Bitcoin nodes. Bitcoin Cash is going to become unusable. So there's going to be no real use case for this thing, because it doesn't matter what software you have. If the network isn't decentralized and adopted, it doesn't have any properties that are scarce and hard to reproduce. So really, people need to understand, the features of a blockchain that are valuable are the ones that are hard to reproduce. And if you can fork a feature into code, it has absolutely no value. And the goal of adoption is to make sure that Bitcoin node network remains decentralized and secure. Because if the Bitcoin node network doesn't have a lot of participants, it becomes easy to censor. It becomes easy to revert transactions, and it becomes hard to trustlessly validate, and Bitcoin loses its value proposition. So adoption, I don't think we should go for adoption at the masses. The other goal of adoption is you want to have people to have skin in the game, in the same game as you, right? So you can't trust anybody in Bitcoin. There's no lender of last resort. There's no authority that's going to come save you. What you want is you want to have a lot of other people that are in the same corner as you, that are in the same tribe as you, that have the same interests as you. So I'm an advocate not of global mass adoption, but of targeted adoption. I want engineers at NASA to hold Bitcoin. I want politicians to own Bitcoin. I want entrepreneurs to own Bitcoin. I want, ex-military veterans to use Bitcoin. I want everybody in society that we want on our side to be in the trenches with us when we go through this hyperbyte Bitcoinization event, and when there is actually a confrontation, because right now Bitcoin has not had a real confrontation with governments, with central banks. It's been really fun so far. Well, there's not a lot of enemies that have come after us. So once this happens, once there's a crackdown, I don't want mom and pop on the street to be in my corner. I want the people that are influential to have a lot of Bitcoins, so that this is the goal of Bitcoin. The goal of Bitcoin is to go against government, central banks, and that's the main use case, and that's what we need to focus on.
Ty.
No,
you're echoing, man.
There's an echo somewhere.
Put your headphones on, dude.
Okay, so you're saying that there's no confrontation. Well, I'm going to get confrontational right now about what you're saying, because Bitcoin was invented to be an electronic peer-to-peer cash, and that's used for payment systems. So to say that you only want a special part of the population to use Bitcoin or things like that, I completely disagree with that. I completely disagree.
What do you mean by cash? So when you say it was invented to be cash, what do you mean by cash?
The reason why Bitcoin was invented was because no one was able to invent electronic digital cash that people can send across the internet.
What are the properties of cash? What are the properties of cash that Bitcoin?
Okay, there's 6 properties of cash. There's 6 properties of cash, and I'll explain it to you if you don't understand it, because if you've been around in Bitcoin for a while, the first is that it's fungible. So we all agree on that. So no one is disagreeing on the fungibility. The second,
cash is not fungible. Each piece of cash has a unique ID on it.
No, cash. The idea of a currency is that it needs to be fungible, so that one unit, whether you chop it in one big piece or a small piece, it's still the same. 1 ounce of gold, if you cut an ounce of gold,
that's money. That's not cash. That's money. Money is supposed to be fungible. Cash is not fungible. Each piece of cash has a serial number.
Yeah, but you can flip the script and try to change the script and all that you want, man. But you ain't gonna change how people look at currencies.
No, but you say that's why Bitcoin was invented.
You can change it right to the details into the minutia of what is this and what is that. I ain't falling for that crap, man. It's electronic cash, man.
I'll tell you what the properties of cash are. As an economist,
you don't have to tell me, because I already know it, man. I already know what electronic cash is. I've been preaching about Bitcoin since 2012.
You don't know what the properties of cash are.
If you go back to 2012, man, you don't sit there and tell me I don't know what electronic cash is, man. Okay. I've traded thousands of dollars of different currencies. I've traded currencies all my life, man. Most of my adult life. So don't sit there and be ignorant with me and tell me I don't know what electronic cash is, or don't know what cash is, okay? I'm living in a country with 92 million people, and all they use is cash here.
You named 6. One of them was wrong. Cash is fungible fiat.
I probably used more cash in my hands in the last 30 days of my life than you probably will in the rest of your life. So don't tell me about
I probably have more money than the whole of Rwanda. Are you taking Roger's script? Are you taking Q? No, Ty, the properties of cash are simple.
Right here in my hand. Okay, so don't tell me what I don't know what cash is. How much cash do you have in your pocket right now? Because you ain't using it. That's why. You're using electronic.
Ty, I'll tell you what the properties of cash are. I'll tell you what the properties of cash are compared to. You might learn something.
Why I'm interjecting is I'm neutral about this. I'm not taking sides with Bcash or Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin, BTC or BCH. I'm neutral. I'm a trader. I really don't care which one of them wins, But
I know.
And the use cases
for speculation.
You're not gonna be in a broadcast with me and sit there and act like I'm ignorant about what cash is. One, it's fungible, okay, and that you can't distinguish one from the other. The cash that's in my pocket is the same as yours in your pocket. Okay,
cash is not fungible. Cash is not fungible, man. Cash has okay, so what happens if you steal money from a bank?
If cash is not possible with Bitcoin, go use something else.
What happens
That's
if
all
you
I
steal
gotta
money from
say.
a bank? You have the serial
That's all
number
I
on
gotta
it.
say. Okay.
You know, you have the
Yeah, it's
serial
got a
number on it.
serial number on it. Okay, and each piece of Bitcoin, even when it's split into 100 million pieces, still has a transaction ID on it. Okay, so don't think that there's a hash that goes along with it. So it's no
Transaction
different.
ID is just the hash. Is this the hash
The
of
other thing
the
too
script?
is that it's censorship resistant. Okay, there's privacy.
That's true.
Cash.
That's true. Cash is censorship resistant. That's you got one so far. You got one. Censorship resistant is
I got more than one for you. Just listen up and stop
No, you got
interrupting.
one.
And I'll tell you what.
Ahead.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But
Sure,
the key thing that makes an electronic cash or any item, whether it's physical, tangible, or intangible, that makes it able to be used as a currency, fungibility is extremely important, because people got to know that what they use, right? What I use and what you use are the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely important. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that someone is using it and it's specialized for one person, that's a bunch of crap to me. Okay, especially when the system was made so that everyone can use it.
Person. What does that mean? Can you rephrase that? I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, you're saying that you want a specific niche of the global population to adopt it, like software engineers and all these special people.
Oh no, I don't want that niche to adopt it at all. I think everyone should adopt it. What I'm saying is that people will adopt it because they need to eat. People will adopt it by themselves. Bitcoin sells itself. So if I'm going to do effort,
Bitcoin does not sell itself. There's people like Andreas Antonopoulos. There's people like Bitcoin Meister. There's people like myself. There's people. There's hundreds and thousands of people around the world selling Bitcoin to the public every day. So the idea that no one needs to sell Bitcoin is a bunch of crap. Andreas Antonopoulos is full-time out there selling Bitcoin to the world. Okay. So don't give me that crap that
and what is he selling, Ty? I'll tell you. Okay, so it's taking too long to talk about cash, but I'll tell you what the properties of cash are. There's properties of cash. Cash is censorship resistant, because when Satoshi invented Bitcoin, PayPal existed, and PayPal was electronic fiat. Electronic fiat had already existed for a long time. Even Liberty Reserve had existed. Like digital gold had existed for a long time, and they all failed. All of these centralized payment methods failed to achieve the digital cash status. So what is digital cash? It's censorship resistant, because if you have cash in my hand and I give you cash physically, there is no third-party entity that can stop that from happening. Censorship resistant. The second aspect of cash, it's a bearer asset. It's not held in a ledger. The ownership of it is not held in some kind of database. It's whoever physically owns it is the owner of it. These are the two big properties of cash. Cash is less fungible, as far as I'm concerned, than bank transfers. It's much, much, much easier to obfuscate payment trails with bank transfers. As far as I'm concerned, it's much easier than actually, like, if you steal cash from a bank, it's difficult to get rid of those cash with serial numbers. So censorship resistant is the #1 feature of cash. And how do you get censorship resistant? It's via decentralization. And how do you get decentralization? Is you get a lot of people to independently verify and independently enforce the rules. And how do you do that? You make running Bitcoin nodes really easy. And how do you do that? You make Bitcoin nodes really small and Bitcoin blocks really small, because the average person can now do it on his phone with a prune node. And when I say to go ahead and get adoption, like, Bitcoin is a force of nature. It's the law of the universe, right? It's just currency competition. There's just going to be one winner. So Bitcoin is going to win because fiat currencies fail. If the fiat currency system...
No. That is your opinion that one currency is going to win. That's not a law of the universe. That's just your personal opinion. That's not a fact.
So what's the advantage of using Bcash over PayPal?
No, I didn't say. I'm not here to say that Bcash is better or Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, any of that's better. I'm just saying in general, right, what this was invented for, and the stuff that you're saying that, you know, that you're making it sound like Bitcoin is only for a unique.
Because you just said it was invented to be cash. So what was it invented for? What is Bitcoin invented for? What's Bitcoin for?
Bitcoin was invented to be an electronic cash that cannot be double spent. Okay, it has, you know, properties of scarcity, which we agree on, 21 million. We're not going to disagree on that. It has properties of fungibility, right? That makes it a currency, right? It's divisible. We can divide it into 100 million Satoshis, right? And I'm sure that sometime in the future, there's probably going to be some ways to divide it more if it's necessary, right? It's durable, okay? It's got to be durable so it lasts forever. Okay, and it's transferable, that you and I can transfer
They're
to
not
each other.
properties of cash, Ty. These are properties of money. There's two different things, right? If you look at the economic literature, there's properties of money, generally speaking.
You can label it, you know, cash. You can label it money. You can label it whatever you want, you know, to try to change up the story of what is trying to be that Satoshi.
I'm not changing up any story. I'm asking for definitions, because you say that Bitcoin was invented to be cash, and I agree. And what cash is a bearer asset.
Cash, listen, it's an electronic cash. It needs to be scarce. It needs to be fungible. It needs to be divisible. It needs to be durable. It needs to be so that you and I can transfer it to someone else or to each other.
Why is Bitcoin scarce?
It has to have a sort of value.
What makes Bitcoin
those are the properties of what makes it a currency and what makes it to be used as cash. Okay.
What makes Bitcoin scarce, Ty?
Laugh and smile and giggle and make up all these fancy words, but you ain't hiding from the truth. You know, you ain't. You can ditch and dodge and try to, you know, put makeup on what you're saying.
Like, why is Bitcoin scarce? Why is Bitcoin scarce?
Man? You go back to the videos of Andreas Antonopoulos, and prior to 2016, everybody was broadcasting the same damn message. You ain't gonna change up the story just because you just came on to the broadcast.
What is this? Is this? Am I going against the club membership rules here? Like,
no, you're not going. You get to express your opinion. But, you know, the audience needs to know that it's your opinion. You know,
well, of course it's my opinion. This is Bitcoin's an open source protocol. Bitcoin's an open source protocol.
You know what I'm saying? It's not
scientific law or something. You know, you're right. One of the biggest properties of Bitcoin is its scarcity, in addition to censorship resistant. But why is Bitcoin scarce? If I can take like Bitcoin and I can fork it, and I can fork the code, and it does the same thing. There's now 42 million Bitcoins, right? If I have 21 million Bitcoins and I fork the code and the blockchain, and by forking the code and the blockchain, the properties remain the same, I now have 42 million Bitcoins, and there's like we double the amount of Bitcoins. Then I fork it again, you triple the amount of Bitcoins. So yes, because the properties. Sorry, go ahead.
If you want to fork Bitcoin, it's an open source software, man. You're welcome to fork it just like any of the other 2,000 cryptocurrencies out there. Nobody's stopping.
I don't want to fork it. I'm making a point about scarcity. The point that I'm making is that there's a reason why Bitcoin is scarce. It's because if you fork it, you don't get the same properties. If I take Bitcoin right now, and I fork it into Francis coin, right, it will not be fungible. It will not be censorship resistant. And it will not be a bearer asset. It will just be a balance, right? So when the value of these currencies is the decentralization, is the node running, is the core protocol level, which allows everybody to download it and to run it, is this overlapping network effects. And this is what brings the value to these currencies. So adoption for the sake of adoption doesn't do anything to the value of Bitcoin, because if you're using a Bitcoin wallet and you're using Coinbase and sending from your Coinbase account using USDC to whatever Bittrex account, or using decentralized, coins, it doesn't bring any value to the Bitcoin network whatsoever. It doesn't add to the decentralization. It doesn't add to the properties of Bitcoin. You might as well be using PayPal. That's what I'm saying. So the properties of cash of Bitcoin, censorship resistance, you nailed it on the head, and its scarcity, you nailed it on the head again. And these are the two only things that Bitcoin does that the fiat system and apps and PayPal and all these things can't do.
All right, I get to talk again. This is good. Whoa, that was unpredictable, people. Pound that freaking like button.
Pound that like button.
Laurian hasn't spoken for a while here. What's your take on what just transpired, Laurian?
Well, I guess you're not mentioning the whole point, I think, which is sound money. So, I think the word cash, of course, when you think about cash now, we think of things like Federal Reserve notes that have serial numbers and the fungibility and so on. But it's about sound money. So sound money is something that we all look forward to, and that's why we like scarcity. So, Francis, you mentioned the scarcity thing. But I have to agree with Ty. If people don't use this thing, if we keep it to a small fraction of the population, it's not going to become world money and change the world. So I believe strongly that if we are only thinking about trying to create a social system where everybody has the ability to run nodes, and we artificially limit the capabilities of this thing, I think that we are not going to achieve what we want, which is global adoption. I think that Bitcoin was always meant to be competitive, and it was always meant to be a specialized thing. Now, of course, the issue with Bitcoin, the BTC community, is that if we create specialization and competitiveness, it means that everybody won't be able to have a piece of at least that sort of aspect where you can have a node. And I think that that is a wrong notion. I think that everybody having a node is going to be what debilitates Bitcoin and restricts it and stops it from growing to become world money. The idea that decentralization, we have to have maximum decentralization, I think is false. I think that there is a level where we can achieve where we have sufficient decentralization. And I'm not talking about where it's sort of decentralized. I'm saying that as long as we have enough decentralization, that is sufficient to have the sound money system. And of course, now what we have is an economic incentive for a specialized companies or whatever it is to now start having nodes. And as long as there are a sufficient number of them, we can have decentralization. I know the fear from BTC is that if we have a few miners out there, that those guys will easily be able to be shut down. I don't think so. I think that what will happen is that this won't become, and this is another narrative I think that BTC, the community, are wrong on, is that what we're trying to do is fight against the government. Again, if we want this to become world money, we need the government to buy in and accept it. And that means we need to be legitimized. And of course, a legitimized industry doesn't necessarily mean it's now co-opted by government and government can shut it down. Again, government is diverse. There are many governments around the world. And if it so happens that one country decides to shut down miners, that's okay, as long as there are countries out there that allow it. And those countries will allow it if those mining operations become legitimate and they pay tax and and the wallet providers that do KYC. Now, of course, that is not a notion that BTC community like. They like to be completely independent of government. They actually, there's this whole notion of crypto anarchy, where ultimately we can destroy government through something like this. I think, again, that's naive. I'm a libertarian, and I admit that, and I would like smaller government. But I think that the only way this can become world money and accepted is if we comply with whatever the local rules are and regulations. And again, it's going to be the way that we achieve what we want, which is a world where we have sound money. That is actually what this is all about. How can I stop my money from being debased? How can I stop government from having a monopoly on money and ruining the money and destroying the country like they did in Zimbabwe, like they're doing in Venezuela? So I see a world, a much more practical world, where a Bitcoin is an economic system. It is a capitalist system. It is driven by industries that are competing against each other, trying to outdo each other in terms of block mining and earning those rewards. And where companies like CentB, we provide value around that, but we make sure that whatever the local regulations are, we comply with. And that means we get global adoption. And that's when the world changes. Not, as Ty, you said, where it becomes, what you said against is that it's a niche thing and we all protect it against all odds. That is not how the world is going to change with Bitcoin. The way the world is going to change is through mass adoption. How is mass adoption going to be achieved? Where we have an environment where whatever regulations there are, we comply, and we manage to take away the monopoly that government has over creating your money.
All right, Francis has probably got something to say. Francis got something to say about.
I'm just curious to see, like, who is this we? Because, like, when I speak about adoption, I speak about like what I do and like what my business does and what I'm involved in. Like, there's no we. There's no, the notion that there's like a management committee of Bitcoin and that like the leaders of Bitcoin like manage it and make decisions for the way it goes is complete nonsense. Like, Bitcoin is.
That's what I'm saying. So, Francis, what I'm saying, people who want Bitcoin to succeed. We are, you and I, the people in the world who want to have sound money. That's we. I'm not talking about us as the guys who are selling it.
Bitcoin already exists, and Bitcoin's perfectly fine the way it is. It works really, really well. It definitely fulfills its intended usage, which is to be a censorship-resistant store of wealth. Like, ask WikiLeaks, ask darknet market vendors, ask people in China that are using it to move money, ask people in Venezuela that are moving their money around.
It doesn't serve the role of global money. Bitcoin right now is a niche product.
Sure. So what does it, you say, for example, you say, you seem to take, you have two contradicting arguments. You say that Bitcoin is scarce, and you say that people don't need to run nodes. Why is Bitcoin scarce? It's because there are rules, right? That the miners can't create money out of thin air. And why would the miners not create money out of thin air? Why would they not just get more income? It's because if they do, each user of Bitcoin, which is running a node, will say, I don't accept your block. It doesn't respect the rules, right? What happens if we have, like in Ethereum, 4 companies that are running nodes? You have Infura, you got Consensus, you got Parity, and you got the Ethereum Foundation. These are 4 companies that are running nodes for 95% of the network, which is Bcash's goal, right? Which is the Bcash has a centralized planning community. When we talk about Bcash, we can talk about an organization. When we talk about Bitcoin, we talk about a spontaneously emerging Schelling point. But in the case of Bcash, like, this is what they specifically say they want. They want to run, 100 terabyte nodes in data centers. And of course, that's perfect, because if you are a miner and you're trying to change the rules of the blocks that you're mining in order to make more money, then the only people you need to convince are the people in that hotel room in Hong Kong that you're inviting to do your summit, like with your companies. So like the fact that Bitcoin is scarce and is sound money is pre-dependent upon the idea that people are running nodes and validating the rules. So I mean, you can't have it, you can't have it both ways. And when you say that we want to do this with Bitcoin, we wanted to do that Bitcoin, or Bitcoin has a sales pitch, Bitcoin doesn't have a sales pitch. Bitcoin just is, and that is enough. And if we want ourselves to, if you want to take your time to make your Bitcoins worth more, and if you want to take your time to do something like, increase adoption for any purpose, and that's perfectly fine, but it's not a requirement. Like, Bitcoin doesn't need like mass adoption right now to work. I mean, if mass adoption comes, it's going to be because there is an overwhelming demand for it. Imagine currencies are network effects like languages. Switching from US dollar to Bitcoin is really, really, really hard. It's not like switching from Facebook to MySpace. It's not like switching from Chrome to Firefox, and not like switching from Android to iPhone. Like, switching from a currency to another implies huge transaction costs, and you can lose all your money. Like, it's the strongest network effect in the world, because if you choose the wrong network, it's not like if you're betting on Beta Max versus VHS, you're not going to lose much. If you're betting on fiat versus Bitcoin, and you're actually moving your wealth from one place to another, you risk to die. You risk your currency being worth 0 and not being able to feed yourself and feed your kids. So when people move from one currency to another, there needs to be an overwhelming advantage to it. And the overwhelming advantage to it is just to keep my wealth, preserve my own wealth. People are not going to opt into this really complicated, decentralized thing just because it's marginally better in their app to like pay a friend. Like, payment apps in Asia, payment apps in the Caribbean that I've used when I went there, they're fantastic. They use fiat money. Some of them even use USD. You click something on your phone, and the merchant instantly sees that he's received the money. This is fiat. This is like a payment app. It's like fantastic. Have you ever used like a Google Watch and tap and pay, and like have the money credit? Like, this is fantastic UX. Like, Bitcoin doesn't compete on UX. The UX is the same for everything. Bitcoin competes on fundamentals. And the only reason why like Bitcoin is not like 99% of the market is because the competition between currencies right now is between speculators. Like, no one's actually using any of these currencies. The only use case for Bitcoin, which is widespread right now, is store of value. And the second use case of Bitcoin, which is widespread, is censorship resistant transactions. Like, this is like, people don't use Bitcoin because it's more convenient to pay online. People pay online with Bitcoin because they have a stash of Bitcoins, which they use as their store of wealth. And periodically, they will exit their position in Bitcoin, and instead of selling for fiat, they will buy stuff online. Like, can you imagine how difficult it is to like buy Bitcoin to spend something online? Like, the entire cost of that is like 7%. Like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go on Coinbase, you're gonna buy it, send it to your wallet, and then there's volatility, there's transaction fees. You need to do a bank transfer in order to get the Bitcoins first. So you need to use the bank system to get the Bitcoin in the first place, or use cash and ATM and get 5%. And then you take that, in the meanwhile, the value fluctuates, and then you pay online with it. And then, that payment online is like pretty neat. It's cool. It was like 10-cent transaction fee. But then how did you get the Bitcoin? You bought them on Coinbase, you paid like 3%, or you bought them at the ATM, you paid 7%, the value fluctuated. So, I mean, it's useless to try to, like, I don't decide what Bitcoin does. I decide what I do. and I'm just trying to give advice to people. If you really want Bitcoin to be like super successful, like two things, like focus on the base layer, because that's the core value proposition of Bitcoin. Like stop trying to find use cases for Bitcoin. It already has one, right? That use case is not popular with the mainstream. Big deal, right? Big deal. Like, we can't change Bitcoin to be anything we want. It is one thing. It does one thing. And if that one thing, people don't want it, then we just need to wait till people want it. And what is that one thing? That's sound money. Right? People don't want sound money right now. They want easy money, right? People love easy money. People love when their governments create money and inflate the currency and keep the interest rates really low, because now they can borrow and spend and spend and spend. People love easy money, right? They don't want hard money yet. They will one day. They will when their easy money is worth nothing.
This is the reason why Bitcoin has such a struggle to gain mainstream adoption, is because every time the issue of Bitcoin comes up, it's always a battle between the Bitcoin core guys and the Bitcoin Cash guys. It never goes into a debate on how it benefits people. It's always a debate on which one's the better Bitcoin. You know, and this is what this confusion is.
You haven't been listening.
This confusion is what's killing Bitcoin's adoption.
We just had a really in-depth discussion about how Bitcoin is used by people. Like, it's not a matter of Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash. It's just an example.
It's always like, whenever you hear Bitcoin nowadays, you know, people like have to take a side. Like, I got to take this side or I got to take this side. There was a time when everyone that was in Bitcoin was on a unified front, promoting, educating the public, and getting the people to understand the benefits of Bitcoin. The reason why we have such a struggle with this adoption is because every time that the topic of Bitcoin comes up, it's always a battle between two political parties in the Bitcoin world. One is talking about the other.
No, it's not. There is a,
yeah, it is.
There's like 50 million Bitcoin users.
Until this issue is resolved, where we're all broadcasting the same message of how Bitcoin can and the blockchain and the cryptocurrency technology can help everyone, there's always going to be.
It's not possible to do that, because Bitcoin is not. Bitcoin is a protocol. Like, it doesn't do anything. It's just math. People do whatever they want with it. Like, there's never been a unified message, Ty. Like, I've been in Bitcoin for 6 years. Like, there's never been a unified message. Even back in the day, when Roger was going around telling everyone that Bitcoin is free and fast, we were telling Roger, stop saying that. Bitcoin is not free and fast. There's a reason why blocks are 10 minutes. Do you know why, Ty? Blocks are 10 minutes? Satoshi decided to do that? It's not because he wanted to put people away.
He didn't know how long it was going to take for the data to propagate around the world. So he set an arbitrary time, hoping that would be enough time for that data to all the
you know what the scientific literature has showed is that 10 minutes retroactively was pretty much the perfect time. Like, Satoshi absolutely nailed it because of the latency in the network. You want the blocks to propagate so that everybody can validate it. And that's what Bitcoin is. The reason why Bitcoin is
but to say that
validate it. You can change the UX of Bitcoin. Like, that's how Bitcoin
say
works.
that, you know, you can validate the transactions, you know, but there's still a small number of people, and I don't want to get into the technical argument about it. All I'm saying is that, you know, that the reason why we have this lack of adoption that everybody's hoping for in Bitcoin is because there's always this political fighting of people taking sides, and there's not a clear message. And nothing kills adoption of Bitcoin faster than confusion.
Explain, Ty. Like, I would like you to go deeper in that. So
because look, if you tell someone right now,
Bitcoin adoption and like people on Twitter like fighting.
If you tell someone, here's several points of adoption here. You take someone that's new. Before I used to be able to sit down, everybody that I talked to about Bitcoin, the first thing I'd tell them is open up their phone, download Coinbase or Bread Wallet, and I'd send them some Bitcoins right there on the spot, and I'd send it back and forth about a dozen times with them. Boom, they understand, right? And then there's a point where it was extremely difficult to do that, right? And it's really hard when you send somebody something and they can't send it back to you. And they're like, so what's the benefit of this?
That's not even true. That's not true. It's always been the same thing. Bitcoin hasn't changed.
No, it's not been. No, it's not been. Okay? There was a time
explain what's different about Bitcoin.
There was a time when people that had less than $10 worth of Bitcoins had it trapped and they couldn't even send it.
And why was that? Why was that? Because
the transaction fee was significantly more than what they had in the balance in their account.
And why is that, Ty?
In Bitcoin for 6 years, you should know that.
Why is that? Of course I know that. But you know why that is? Why is the fee right now 10 cents?
You're asking me what's confusion. Okay, so that's one confusing point, right? Another point is
no. I asked you the mechanics between, you say that the reason why there's no adoption is because of the infighting. I want to understand the mechanics of how Bitcoin adoption is affected by Twitter fights.
The infighting in Bitcoin comes from the lack of a process where everyone can come to a final decision on how the software needs to be updated.
We're talking about adoption, like the relationship with
adoption. What I've been saying all along for the past few years is that there's confusion when people enter the Bitcoin space for the first time. Everything is confusing from the time you download the wallet to the time that you send the transactions, okay, to the time you try to install a node and you find that it takes a while to download the entire Bitcoin Core node, okay? And then once you install it, you know, there's talking about validating the transactions, and you find out that all these things are very confusing. It's not a user-friendly process. And instead of sitting here and both sides, or, you know, individual Bitcoin users and people, influencers, fighting on which one is the better Bitcoin, if there was a way to unify everyone so that we broadcast a clear message, make the software so it's freaking stupid easy for people to use, that's how we get adoption. That's how we bring value.
I just don't see that, because like you download the wallet, it's super easy to use.
If you're sitting, you're a technical person. You're a technical person.
I'm actually not.
Okay.
I'm an economist. I'm a social.
So you're an experienced Bitcoin user, and you're sitting there chuckling and laughing as if, like you're all fucking smart and shit, man. The average person that gets into Bitcoin is not that freaking. It's not that easy for them to use.
But you're just making these logical conclusions that have nothing to do with your arguments. Like
you want to go out there and go and try to pound the streets and educate people and get people to use it and see for yourself how difficult and confusing it is for a complete beginner.
Like I invented the Bitcoin airdrop. Like, you know, the Bitcoin airdrop where you like give people to people. Like we did the first one. I've done that all my life. Like I actually know what users want with Bitcoin.
Okay.
Like,
the process. See the process. The fact that
you have no idea. In 2015, did you hear about Backpage?
The fact that you're not able to see how confusing it is for a beginner to start using Bitcoin.
And
when somebody brings it up,
okay, you know so I'll give you an example because I don't know if you actually interact with Bitcoin. Like I don't know if you have a Bitcoin company, if you have users or anything, but like I'll give you an example of how Bitcoin is actually easy to use, and it's not the usability of the apps that's the problem with adoption. So in 2015, Backpage, it's like Craigslist. It's like a site where people advertise all sorts of goods and services in the marketplace. Backpage was known for its adult section, which, you know, people would, you know, put adult ads on Backpage. And then Backpage got shut down by Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and all these payment methods, and only accepted Bitcoin. And from one day to the next, you have like 100,000 sex industry, you know, workers that are using Backpage to place their sex ads that now have to use Bitcoin and only Bitcoin to do their ads. You know what happened? They all switched to Bread Wallet, and they all went to Bitcoin ATMs, and we did these little guides, and it was super easy, and they were super happy. They thought it was so fun. The Bread Wallet app, they would, you know, put 20 bucks in the machine, and then they would, you know, just lift up their phone like this, and they have little guides, and they would send, receive, they send it to Backpage, and then it takes like, you know, Backpage sees the unconfirmed transaction right away, boop, you know, every merchant does that. When you see an unconfirmed transaction, you say, boop, thank you for your order. And then, you know, you see your balance, and then you can only spend the balance. It's there, but you can only spend it most of the time when there's like one confirmation, which takes like 20, 30 minutes. It's not hard. People can do it. And why did people, why would these users able to do it? Because they actually wanted Bitcoin. They needed Bitcoin. There was a demand, there was a real demand for it. And the demand for Bitcoin was that their website, their service had been censored by financial institutions. That's what caused the demand for Bitcoin. And even if the UX was subpar, it's actually not hard to click bread, to click receive, and to click send, and to click backup. It's not hard. And the payments are they're good. And there was like fees, the fee spike went like this. And you know why there was fees? It's because people were spamming the blockchain. We know that. We tracked them. We even tracked the spammers of the blockchain to a Quadriga account in Canada. Like, it is a known fact that there was a period of spam on the blockchain.
Why should that matter? And how can you verify that those are spam transactions? If somebody wants to send transactions to the network, that's their business.
How can you identify that it's spam? Well, I can send you an article. I can send you a link to explain it to you.
If I want to spam the entire Bitcoin network with 1 billion spam transactions, that's my freaking business. It's a censorship. So, why are you censoring my transactions?
Thankfully,
how can you sit there and say that it's a censorship resistant network, and you turn around and say, "Hey, man, you're not allowed to send any spam transactions"?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
1 billion transactions.
I did not say that. I never said anybody was not allowed to do anything.
You're right. It's an open network.
I didn't say that, Ty. You're using what's called a strawman argument. Ty, have you ever heard the concept of strawman argument? It's when you say that someone said something and you argue against what you say someone said, but it's not what he said. I never said anybody was not allowed to do anything. I'm just explaining why there was fees, and the fees have nothing to do with the way Bitcoin works at that time. It was spam. And you know what? You're totally correct. In order to have a censorship-resistant, decentralized network, it doesn't matter what I want. And thankfully, we have what's called a fee market, which is what Satoshi invented. Satoshi invented the concept of the fee market because the concept was, how can I prevent people from spamming Bitcoin and filling the blocks without having a centralized party? Oh, well, we'll just price the space in the blocks. We'll just put a price on it. That's so you can't argue against the fees and then argue against something else.
I don't like spam transactions myself, okay? But it really shouldn't matter. If it's a censorship-resistant, fungible network that's neutral, anybody should send, what if there's somebody doing scientific research and they need to send a few trillion transactions through their one Satoshi? That's their business.
Yeah, they pay for it. They have to pay for it.
They pay for it. The transaction should go through. Who are you or I to come in there and tell them, hey, you can't send spam transactions?
No one said that.
That's a bunch of nonsense.
No one said that. Strawman argument again. I didn't say that.
But what I want to go back, what I want to go back to is the key thing here is that, when Adam was bringing up about the CoinDesk article, about the killer app, about the adoption, I'm still convinced as long as there's still this infighting between Bitcoin Core guys and Bitcoin Cash guys, I'm a trader. I'm neutral. I don't give a crap which one of them wins, okay? But I do know this, is that nothing kills adoption faster than confusion. When somebody comes in and they're listening to you and you're like, hey, man, Bitcoin Core is the real Bitcoin, and then you got Lorian over there, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin
Core. Bitcoin Core is just a software.
That creates confusion.
Bitcoin is also a Bitcoin client, and there's also LibBitcoin and Bitcoin Knots. There's all sorts of Bitcoins that are software that are Bitcoin.
I'm just using that just to differentiate between which one's which, man. Okay,
but I don't get that. It's like saying why do people learn English?
Coming out, man. Right. Don't try to nitpick what I'm trying to say, man. I'm not nitpicking what you're saying, man. Don't jump in there. We're trying to have a civil argument here and debate here, man. Don't jump in and nitpick every little damn thing, man. Let's get the main.
You're misrepresenting what I'm saying. You're misrepresenting what I'm saying. So let's explain to me, why do people learn English? Like, English people are rude. They invade other countries. That American people are bad people and British people have colonized. There's all sorts of English fighting and English language problems.
Maybe it's because they got stuff that's better and other countries want to do it, so they need to learn it. Simple. I mean, if somebody does something better, whether they conquer your country or not, there's people. Yeah. America tried to conquer Vietnam for 30 years and failed. Yeah. We still try to learn English here. When somebody does something better, you try to replicate it and clone it and copy it.
So what's wrong? Totally correct.
Hey, you know what? When the Europeans came in and tried to conquer Japan, they were using swords and the Europeans were using firearms. And they said, you know what? We got our ass kicked. Let's start using firearms. And they industrialized. So, I mean, what's wrong with that? But that's not deep.
I totally agree.
We're not going to go on a tangent with all this stuff, man. It comes back to what the initial thing is. If there was a way where you and I, Lorian, Bitcoin Meister, right? Pound that like button, guys, right? Even if you hate me, the more you hate me, the more you should pound that like button, okay? Because you're going to get it straight from me. You ain't going to get no bunch of crap from me. When you hear what I say, that's what's on my mind. If there's a way that you and I, Francis, one thing, if if I see you in person, no matter how much we debate online, I'll still go buy you, offer you a beer or something when I see you, you know. The reason why is because I know you are trying to do the same thing that I'm doing. You're trying to get Bitcoin adopted by the world. You're trying to introduce the world to a better form of currency that's going to free up a lot of people. I know that. You and I might have differences of opinions. Bitcoin Meister and I might have differences of opinions of which one's the better Bitcoin or whatever, you know. But at the end of the day, I still respect the fact that you guys are trying to do a better thing for the general population. That's why I still come on to a Bitcoin Meister show every time he asks me, you know. But wouldn't it be great if all four of us were on the same page broadcasting the same message and the software was easy to use? Imagine the world that we would have with crypto if that was the case. Instead of us sitting here fighting with each other, we could be educating the public about how they can benefit and from the Bitcoin technology and how it can eliminate a lot of censorship, how it can, you know, allow a lot of people to do the things that they couldn't do before, right? In Vietnam right now, no one can send money out. I mean, what do you think it would do to 92 million people, right? If they have the ability to send money out to other people around the world, like you and Bitcoin Meister and Laurian can do. Like, no one's allowed to send money out of this country. That is what we should be focusing on. We shouldn't be focused on fighting each other to see who's got the bigger penis, you know, Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, man. That's not what we should be fighting about. We should be on a unified front as a community fighting so that the people, like the 92 million people in Vietnam who are unable to send money to someone, why aren't they allowed to send money to another country like America?
The Vietnamese government censors. The Vietnamese government is censoring, is not allowing, this is what's in Zimbabwe too. They're not allowing traditional bank money to get out of the country. So the option people are forced into is Bitcoin. So Francis and I think that is a tremendous, a huge benefit of Bitcoin, something that Bitcoin could do. But then we have people that are working, that think it's very important for people to use cryptocurrency now, like Laurian. So I mean that's the conflict here, is that Francis supports this base. He thinks the base layer is unconfiscatable, and to help people send their money out of countries, send their value out of countries. And Laurian is talking about is working on adoption. And you keep on saying we got to increase adoption, we got to increase adoption, we got to increase adoption. But not everybody is. I think everybody would like adoption to increase, but that's not my big priority. I know that it's not adoption. Everybody and their mother using it every day. For me, it's for people to be able to use it when they really need it. So they can't lose their wealth anymore. So they can send their money out of their value out of the country when the government's put restrictions on. So I mean, these two desires, they're not clashing desires. They're just, which one should be focused on more? Which one is more important? Should we really, how much should we worry about adoption? You think it's very important to worry about adoption. Laurian thinks it's very important to worry about adoption. And that's what this whole discussion today has definitely been about. And I think it's obviously it's a discussion that will continue to go on and on and on. And we'll see how it works in the long run here. So I wanted to tie all that up right now because I know, first of all, Francis, you had to go like a while ago, I think. So thank you, Francis. You can get out of here now if you want to, and we'll continue though. We will continue the show because I'm sure Laurian's got some other things. So Francis, you want to say bye real quick or anything? You good, Francis? You're muted. There you go. Unmute.
Yeah, I did have a meeting, but the people that are having the meeting are watching the show right now. So they came in and they're like, go on, don't stop. So yeah, Ty, no, definitely, like, I'll buy you a beer. You'll buy me the second beer, the first round, the second round, for sure. I mean, this is just an educational, philosophical discussion that we're having. It's definitely nothing personal. And I'm friends with most people in the Bitcoin industry, but my point is just that people, like, when they underestimate how fragile Bitcoin still is right now. Like, Bitcoin is a nascent system, and you cannot build anything secure, scalable, private, censorship resistant on top of something that is not scalable, secure, private, and censorship resistant. Like any layer you build on top, any app you build on top, any service you build on top is going to be dependent on that base layer. So what's the point of getting Bitcoin adopted if it doesn't work? What's the point of getting Bitcoin adopted if it's not censorship resistant? And there's no trade-off between the two. It's not, Bitcoin doesn't become worse the more it gets adopted. It's just a matter of people putting their focus and energy somewhere. My belief is that Bitcoin will sell itself, and that salespeople are great and education is good, but that ultimately the demand for Bitcoin can't be generated. Like it's going to happen on its own. And realistically, if fiat currencies don't fail, and I'm not against governments, I'm against central banks. Central banks are usually government owned, but I'm not against central bank governments per se. I'm against government money by the central banks. So if the central banking system doesn't fail, then Bitcoin has no use case. Right? Bitcoin is a hedge. Bitcoin is a life raft. It's like the life raft on the Titanic is only useful if the Titanic sinks. If the Titanic doesn't sink, then the life raft is obviously useless. So that's the point. And just my last point is I'm not going on a tangent when I'm talking about English. And you made a really good point, which is that even though the Vietnamese were invaded by English speakers, they now speak English. It is because the utility of the network effect of speaking English and the opportunities of being in a network with other English speakers is far, far, far superior to any kind of perceived, cultural, problem with the English language. So same thing with Bitcoin. Like if someone doesn't adopt Bitcoin because he thinks it's, people are frustrating, and to me, it makes no sense. Like people will adopt Bitcoin. The everyday person will adopt Bitcoin when their life depends on it. I mean, this is how currencies move. It's usually a hyperinflation phase where people switch. They switch because they don't have a choice anymore. People don't care about the experience of paying with Bitcoin and paying with fiat is functionally the same for most things. So it's all about the network effect, and it's all about people will move to Bitcoin if it works, and if it is a real sustainable hedge against fiat, and that's it. And promoting Bitcoin adoption at the merchant level right now, I think might be misplaced. For adoption advocates, I would say promote the adoption of Bitcoin for income. I don't want Uber to accept Bitcoin. Like I can already buy Uber coupons with Bitcoin. I can buy a Uber gift card with Bitcoin, and it's functionally the same. Like I pay with Bitcoin, and I enter like the gift card in my Uber app, and I can pay. What I want to see is I want to see Uber paying out the drivers in Bitcoin. That's what I want to see. I want to see the drivers that are in censored jurisdictions. In some places, doing Uber is illegal or it's unregulated, or they look at your PayPal account and they seize your taxes there, and they your income is all reported through the app and stuff. I want to see Uber paying out in Bitcoin. That's the adoption that I want to see, because once the drivers have the money coming in, once the people have the money, the Bitcoins coming in, they will spend it out. People are not going to spend Bitcoin if they just buy it, because buying Bitcoin and spending it is more expensive than any other system, and it's slower than any other system, because when you buy Bitcoin to spend it, you are using fiat transfers also and Bitcoin. So it's like twice as bad for payments if you have to buy Bitcoin and then spend it. So focus your energies people earning Bitcoins rather than people spending Bitcoins. That's my 2 cents. I gotta go, guys. But
thanks,
it was great talking to you, Ty, and great talking to you.
Good talking to you.
And Adam as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, see you, Francis. All right, Lorian hasn't spoken for a while. Lorian, please share your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I guess, Ty, I totally agree with you. It's such a pain there being so much confusion, and that is a huge problem with the adoption. But actually, I think it's going to come down to the products. And we're going to now see the companies that are producing the user-friendly products, and those are going to be the ones that drive whichever blockchain. And at this moment, it's very difficult to try and create products on top of the Lightning Network. And so this is going to be a product game. But I also have to go. My battery's about to die. But I just want to say this is Centbee right over here. We're about to have a Bitcoin Cash meetup. So please download Centbee if you haven't already. It's the world's most user-friendly wallet. And I'm sure you'll love it. And if you tweet your receive address with the Centbee wallet, I'll send you some Bitcoin Cash. How about that? Adam,
all right.
It's a pleasure.
Lorian, yes, good to see you, my friend. Lorian, have fun down there in Johannesburg. All right.
Good to have you on here, Lorian.
All right, now it's just Ty and I. It's Ty and I left here, and I well, first of all, Ty, when you're on the show, man, you bring the pain, baby. You bring it. We don't know what's gonna happen when Ty Zen is on here. It turns into a barroom brawl. You don't know what's next. Sometimes some curses might leak out there. Yeah, who knows? So everybody, just like Ty said, pound that freaking like button. But I want to give Ty some more time to speak here because I have two specific things. First of all, I want to thank R. Rafterman for the super chat and also Josh for the super chat. And he had a question. And now there's only one dude left. So let's see if this one dude can answer the question. Can Bitcoin be manipulated like the precious metals? And he's obviously referring to the paper gold that's been created, and why gold has never gone to the moon.
Yeah, I believe that from a trader's perspective, I believe Bitcoin has been manipulated since the beginning. And it's being manipulated, I think, by the exchanges doing fake volume. I think that's the number one, I don't know what you call it, fraud that I think a lot of the exchanges are doing, is that they're creating fake volume where they're churning the, they're buying and selling Bitcoins within their own accounts or within dummy accounts or fake accounts to create the illusion that there's a lot of volume at their exchange, so everybody comes over there. I think that's how I think that Bitcoin is being manipulated. But as far as institutions coming in and buying large amounts of Bitcoin for their hedge funds or for their just funds or whatever it is that they're doing for their investments, I think that's normal. I mean, I don't consider that a manipulation. What I consider manipulation is when the fake volume that is being created by the exchanges. That's what I think that's what I would consider the manipulation.
Now I've got another related type of question. Actually, Francis alluded to fiat coins a few times, and he meant stable coins. So this week, stable coins have been just the rage. It was like peak stable coin. So I just laughed at stable coins because I'm not a trader. I'm like, why are people even playing around with this stuff? Value your wealth in Bitcoin. On the other hand, as you have said multiple times on the show, you are a trader. You're in it to make money. What is your take on all these stable coins? Is this something you care about?
My take is that we've been, telling people not to mess with them since Tether was around 21 million market cap. The reason why is that for those who don't know what a stable coin is, it's supposed to be a coin that's backed by a equivalent fiat currency. So, for example, like USDT Tether, if it has $1 billion market cap, it's supposed to be backed by $1 billion worth of US dollars. The reason why we told people not to mess with it is because we don't have any evidence that those coins are being backed up. If at the time that we said this, it was Tether was around 21 million market cap at that time, and that has nothing to do with Bitcoin's supply, number of supply. It just so happens that the market cap was at around $21 million at that time. It has nothing to do with the supply of Bitcoin. Okay, and we've been telling people not to mess with it, simply because we don't have any evidence if the Hong Kong banks or whoever it is that's supposed to be backing it up actually has the US dollars to back it up.
Now that's Tether. So what do you think about the new ones, though? The new ones.
The new ones, look, the reality is this. It doesn't matter what my personal opinions are about these stable coins. Mm-hmm. The reality is the market wants it, okay? So even though we tell people to stay away from it, the reality is the market wants it, and the market wants these stable coins for several reasons. One is that for a lot of people, the stable coins are a lot more stable than the currency that they are their home country currency. So for them, it's worthwhile. In the past, there was a lot of Western people, traders and investors, that would exchange their Bitcoin or their cryptocurrency into a stable coin such as Tether for tax reasons. However, from my limited understanding of tax and accounting in the U.S., they did away with that policy, in the beginning of 2018. So if you're a Westerner or you're an American, there may not be those tax advantages that people previously said there were. Okay, so I personally do not mess with the stable coins myself because there is no evidence. I have no evidence and no way to verify that those coins are actually backed up by real dollars. Now, however, Gemini recently announced that they released a stable coin, and then Coinbase did the same thing. I would say that if you do have to use a stable coin, I would use I don't know how you call it, an American-made stable coin, such as Gemini or Coinbase.
What you mean is that it's an American regulated. I mean, that's you're basing your trust in these coins because they are the most highly regulated ones, basically.
Yeah. So Gemini is approved by is being regulated by not only the SEC, but they're regulated by the New York Financial Authority Conduct, or whatever the New York
NY thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We know. Yeah.
So, and they're very strict, so they're not going to be able to jack around. So they have to follow those policies in New York City, and then they also have to follow the SEC. Coinbase, when they released their stable coin, keep in mind that Coinbase received $75 million back in the days from the New York Stock Exchange, which is the granddaddy of all exchanges in the world. Okay, so you can basically say, quote unquote, they're owned by the New York Stock Exchange, or they're heavily influenced by the New York Stock Exchange. So the fact that they're going to release a stable coin lets us know that at least they got I guess you can say, the blessings or the support of the New York Stock Exchange. So if you have to mess with a stable coin, I'm not making a recommendation, but I would tend to think that it's safer to mess with one that is being scrutinized by U.S. regulators, since they are the most strict financial regulators on the planet at the moment.
Okay, good, interesting take on the stable coins. Now I want to ask you about the Vietnamese fake news. You said you had insight that you wanted to, and this is important because he's on the ground in Vietnam right now.
This is important, because I actually made a video about it, and I have no clue where it's at. So one of these days, so you guys are getting exclusive here on the Bitcoin Meister show right here. And whenever I find the video that I shot about this topic, I'll upload it to my channel at Cryptocurrency Market, okay? Cryptocurrency.market. So a while back, so we have this echo chamber. One of the reasons why, if you guys want to know why I listen to Bitcoin Meister here, is you got all these idiot echo chambers, okay? And for some of you guys that's not from the US, okay, an echo chamber means that one knucklehead says something and all the other broadcasters repeat the same damn thing. They don't even have their opinion, okay? They don't even have their opinion of what they're even saying. They're just saying what other people are saying, right? Like on our channel, sometimes we don't broadcast anything because we ain't got nothing to say. If we broadcast something, it's because we got something to say. So one of the reasons why I listen to Bitcoin Meister is that he actually shares his opinion on what the news or the public events that's going on, okay? So there was a time when everybody was saying that, Vietnam was banning cryptocurrencies, right? And that's not true. And I'm sharing my information with you guys after speaking with multiple lawyers, licensed attorneys in Vietnam. And the information I got is that cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, are not banned in Vietnam. The word banned and the word not recognized, right? In Vietnamese, it's called không chấp nhận. Không chấp nhận means không means no, and chấp nhận means accepted. That means it's not accepted and it's not recognized. And when it's not accepted or recognized, it doesn't mean it's being banned or it's not illegal. It's not recognized as an official, like as a asset class. So because of that, if someone messes with, deals with, invests in, buys or sells Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, if you lose money, don't come crying to the government, the Vietnamese government, because you're not going to be able to go litigate. If I buy some Bitcoins from you and it turns out to be fake Bitcoins, or I give you some Vietnamese dong, the currency here is called the Vietnamese dong. If I give you some Vietnamese dong and you don't give me the Bitcoins, I cannot go and sue you in court, and I cannot litigate with you in court to get my money back, simply because it's not a recognized asset class in Vietnam. So they're basically issuing what would you call it? A warning, a guideline that if you mess with cryptocurrencies, we're not going to be there to give you what do you call that? Consumer protection.
We're not going to bail you out. We're not going to bail you out.
We're not going to bail you out. So do it at your own risk, right? And what the lawyers are telling me is that from their understanding is that the Vietnamese government is taking a wait and see approach. We have a one-party system over here in Vietnam. We don't have a multiple party system like we do in the US. So if they decide they want to make cryptocurrencies legal or not legal, they can issue a decree or an order and put it into effect immediately the next day. They don't need to sit there and wait around, okay? So that's the understanding that I have. There's a huge difference between not recognizing something versus that thing being illegal. So I just wanted to share that with your audience, okay? So whenever they hear that, you know, they understand.
That's awesome, and as you said, that's why I get people on the ground in these locations, because once a popular story comes out, everybody's saying the same thing over and over, and they don't even have a person on the ground in that country. It's the same. Yeah. You hear things about Zimbabwe that are third hand. You hear things about Vietnam that are third hand. Here's a first hand account, people. Judge it for yourself right there.
Yeah, and I want your audience to understand, I'm not repeating what I heard from other traders or other investors or other Bitcoiners. I'm hearing this from lawyers that I had to, it cost me to talk to them.
And he's in Vietnam. He's in Vietnam right now.
And also I talked to, just to double check, to fact check what I'm hearing, I'm talking to lawyers in Ho Chi Minh City, which is the biggest city, is over 9 million people in southern Vietnam.
Saigon.
And then, originally called Saigon. Then I went to Da Nang, which has probably the most beautiful beach in the world, in my opinion. And I've been to a lot of beaches in America, and the water is so damn clean and warm. It's unbelievable. You have got to come to Da Nang, Vietnam, and swim in the waters, man. It is unbelievably beautiful. I mean, I hate to say, but Vietnam does not do a good enough job of promoting their natural beaches, man. It's ungodly beautiful, okay? Anyway, in Da Nang, I talked to some lawyers, and amazingly enough, they said the exact same thing about crypto, that it's not banned, it's just not recognized as an asset class. So hence, when the American or the Western news outlets were reporting that the banks are not allowed, they've been banned from touching Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, that's not true. Banks cannot touch it because it's not a recognized asset class. So when something is not a recognized asset class in Vietnam, right, the financial institutions are not going to mess with it, because that's a huge liability for them. Because if something goes wrong, they cannot go to court and litigate over it. And so there's no consumer protection. So they're not going to mess with it until the government recognizes it as an asset class or something, or the laws change in Vietnam. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys.
That is a good conclusionary on the ground remark there. This has been a very long This Week in Bitcoin show, people. I thank all my guests for being on, and I thank Ty for sticking around. It's really late at night it's getting late at night out there. I think it's almost 1 a.m. or something. So thank you very much, Tyson. Thank you, Lorian. Thank you, Francis. Everybody, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, pound that like button. Remember, this is every Friday is This Week in Bitcoin. You never know what's going to happen. Check out the archives at techbalt.com, TECHBALT. That's also my Twitter handle. You can see the other times that Lorian, Francis, and Ty have been on the show. They've never been on together, but you can check that out. Disruptmeister.com, all my old videos. Remember, I post a new video here every single day. I'll be back tomorrow night for the Beyond Bitcoin show. So Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister, Tizen's got one final comment. Yes.
Yeah, just quick, Vention MGTOW, thanks for the super chat there to support Bitcoin Meister's channel.
Thank him.
Yeah, and he said that, oh, thanks to Zach Bandera, too, for supporting the broadcast, guys. That's really great of you guys. Vention MGTOW asked a really good question. He said that, I heard that it was illegal for merchants in Vietnam to accept Bitcoin. Like I said, the lawyers told me that it's not banned or it's not illegal. It's just that if you use Bitcoin or you deal with it, you're doing it at your own risk. Don't come crying to the government if something goes wrong. That's what they're saying, you know. And Kona Chuck said, "Do I have a girlfriend in Vietnam?" No, I don't have a girlfriend in Vietnam.
Okay. Proceed with caution, basically.
Yeah. One last thing, Adam. There's a lot of fake Bitcoiners and fake crypto people out there. They're all quiet and they're all hush-hush because we're in a bear market. Market's going sideways. Markets dropped 75% from all-time highs. As a trader, I just want to share with everybody. This is when, as a trader or an investor, after the market crashes 75%, in my opinion, this is when I would personally buy. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, okay? But I just want to let people know that there's a lot of fake Bitcoiners out there that are telling people to sell. They're telling people all kinds of stupid nonsense. As a trader and as an investor, as a long-term holder, okay, I am looking to accumulate as many Bitcoins as I can while the price is low after it's dropped 75%. I am not looking to sell. I'm not looking to short Bitcoin. Shorting Bitcoin is the absolute craziest thing to do, okay? Because if this thing skyrockets to the moon next month, next year, the next 2020 halving or something, you are going to be in a world of hurt. And just a last reminder, like I always say on Bitcoin Meister's show, if you are not a professional trader, do not all of a sudden go out there and try to trade this stuff. Do like Bitcoin Meister, strong hand, gold, and hold, okay? Do not all of a sudden, if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a professional, you know, you have other professions, don't all of a sudden run into Bitcoin and out of nowhere become a trader, okay? Because you will get slaughtered, okay? Gold and hold and pound that like button, okay? Right, thanks for having me on your show, bro.
Yes. Ignore the crypto noise, basically.
Yeah.
He's saying ignore that crypto noise. And again, I do want to thank Zach Bandera. Everybody, have a strong hand. Shabbat shalom. I will see you Saturday night. See you. Bye. Thanks, everybody.